Usually, when we talk about starting a business or even just taking on a big new project, there is this incredibly heavy, unspoken expectation of suffering.
Oh, absolutely. Like a rite of passage.
Right. It's as if you're standing at the bottom of this massive mountain, and before you even take a single step, society just straps this 80-pound backpack onto your shoulders, and it is stuffed to the brim with, required reading.
Right. The 5-year plans.
Exactly. The 5-year business plans, the mandatory rounds of funding, endless strategy meetings, and the expectation of 80-hour work weeks.
Yeah, it's that absolute necessity of grinding yourself into dust, really, just to prove to everyone else that you care about your work.
Which is entirely exhausting. We're told that's the toll you have to pay to play the game. But today, we are completely unpacking that backpack and throwing almost all of it right in the trash. Welcome to today's deep dive.
It's a fun one today.
It really is. We are looking at a fascinating stack of notes and excerpts from a book called Rework. It's by Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansson, the founders of a software company called 37 Signals. And our mission today is to completely dismantle those traditional, bloated rules of business and productivity.
Completely tear them down.
Yeah. So whether you're stuck in a day job and dreaming of a side hustle, or you're currently running a small business, or maybe you're just fiercely curious about how to work smarter, this deep dive is your ultimate shortcut to a totally new mindset.
And what's fascinating here is how these sources treat the standard rules of business as little more than a fairy tale.
Yeah.
They really encourage us to strip away all that corporate bloat and get back to the actual physics of doing good work. It's a very grounding perspective. It looks at what actually produces results rather than what simply, looks good in a boardroom.
And before we can build up this new way of working, we kind of have to clear out the toxic rubble of traditional advice.
The old myths.
Right, the biggest piece of rubble being this mythical place people like to call the real world. You hear it all the time. Oh, that's a great idea, but it would never work in the real world.
The real world is often just a rhetorical weapon used by pessimists. I mean, it functions as a built-in justification for not trying.
Totally.
When you scratch the surface, the people who use that phrase are usually just defending the status quo, even when that status quo is terribly inefficient. They want to drag you down into their tomb of lowered expectations, really, so they don't feel bad about their own lack of action.
So pessimists use the real world to tell you your idea will fail. But it turns out the business world actually has a weird obsession with failure anyway. People treat it like a badge of honor.
Like it's mandatory.
Yes. We hear fail early, fail often, as if it's this mandatory tuition you pay for eventual success. But the data in these notes paints a completely different picture.
It completely dismantles the failure is good narrative. There's this Harvard Business School study in the stack that looked at the success rates of entrepreneurs.
Oh, this blew my mind.
Right. So if you have already succeeded in the past, your chance of succeeding again is about 34%. But if your previous company failed, your chance of success on your next try is exactly the same as someone who has never started a business at all.
Wow.
Just 23%.
That is completely counterintuitive. I mean, we're essentially taught that failing gives you this unique armor or profound insight, but the math says it's basically a dead end.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it makes perfect sense. It's just how nature works. Evolution doesn't build on failure, it builds on what works.
Right.
When a predator hunts and misses its prey, it doesn't level up, it just starves. When you fail in business, you only learn what not to do. That still leaves you entirely blind to what you should do next. Success, on the other hand, gives you actual ammunition. It gives you a roadmap.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because they also go after another sacred cow of business, which is the long-term plan. They flat out say planning is guessing. But if we don't plan, aren't we just flying blind? I mean, that sounds terrifying to someone trying to get a new venture off the ground.
It does sound terrifying at first glance.
Yeah.
But think about the mechanics of a long-range plan. You are sitting down to write a highly detailed, step-by-step map for the future at the exact moment when you have the absolute least amount of information about that future.
Because you haven't done anything yet.
Exactly. Before you have even started the project, you're trying to predict market conditions, customer reactions, economic shifts, years in advance.
There is an analogy in the text that makes this really click. It's like taking a trip where you just get on the plane and wing it.
Yes, the travel analogy.
You don't need to map out every single minute of your vacation or pack for every conceivable weather event before you leave your house. You can just go. If it rains, you can always buy an umbrella.
Right.
If you forget something, you just buy a nicer shirt or a toothbrush when you land.
Because plans act as blinders. They let the past drive the future.
Hmm.
A year into a project, you end up saying, well, we have to go this way because the plan from 12 months ago said so. Even if a brilliant new opportunity is staring you right in the face today.
You get locked in.
You do.
Hmm.
Shedding the need to perfectly predict the future lowers the barrier to entry for you. It frees you to actually take action today, right now, with the information you have in front of you.
And taking that action today doesn't mean you have to embrace the toxic grind either. Workaholism is another myth that gets totally eviscerated here.
Oh, absolutely.
Working more hours doesn't mathematically equate to caring more. In fact, workaholics often subconsciously create crises.
Yes.
They let things burn just so they can swoop in, work over the weekend, and feel like heroes. The real hero is the person who figured out a smarter, more efficient way to get the job done and went home at 5 to be with their family.
This is why the text suggests retiring the word entrepreneur entirely. It carries so much baggage. It sounds like this exclusionary members-only club that requires a fancy suit, an MBA, and an 80-hour work week.
Yeah, it's intimidating.
It is. Instead, we should just use the word starter. Anyone who starts something is a starter. It democratizes the whole process.
I really appreciate that shift in language. It makes the barrier to entry feel so much lower.
Yeah.
So if we aren't spending months writing 50-page business plans, and we aren't trying to act like stereotypical entrepreneurs raising millions of dollars, how do we actually begin?
You just look around you.
Yeah, the simplest mechanism for starting is to just scratch your own itch.
It is the most straightforward way to bypass the need for massive market research. Build something that you personally need. When you solve your own problem, you don't need to hire focus groups.
Because you are the target market.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You instantly know if the product is good or if it's lacking because you are the one using it.
Instead of looking at a dozen examples, let's just look at the mechanics of Bill Bowerman. He was a track coach, and he wanted lighter shoes for his runners. He didn't commission a 6-month feasibility study on athletic footwear.
No, he just went to his kitchen.
Right. He poured liquid rubber into his family's waffle iron. That is literally how the Nike waffle sole was born. Because he was the end user, he knew the exact weight and grip the shoe needed. The feedback loop was instant.
And you see the same pattern everywhere, like James Dyson getting frustrated with his own vacuum losing suction.
Oh, yeah?
Or Vic Firth making better drumsticks for the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Or Mary Kay Wagner buying the skincare formulas she personally knew worked on her own skin. When you scratch your own itch, you eliminate the guesswork.
It's so practical.
It is. And more importantly, to solve your own problem, you rarely need a massive influx of outside money. In fact, these notes classify outside money as Plan Z.
Because the moment you take venture capital or angel investment, the physics of your business change. You lose control. You stop building a product to delight your customers, and you start building a product to appease your investors. You get addicted to the cash influx, and suddenly the whole goal shifts from building a sustainable business to focusing on the exit strategy, like how to cash out.
The distinction here is between starting a business and starting a startup. A business respects the gravity of revenue, has to make more than it spends.
Right.
A startup is often treated as this magical realm where expenses are someone else's problem.
Yeah.
But building your company purely to flip it to a bigger corporation means you're building it to flop. Your priorities are completely misaligned if you were planning the divorce settlement before the first date.
That's a great way to put it. But here is the pushback I hear all the time, though. And honestly, I've used it myself. But I don't have the time. I have a day job. I have responsibilities.
Yeah.
The notes offer a pretty harsh reality check here. No time is no excuse. You don't have to quit your day job and risk your mortgage. You just have to trade watching 3 hours of television or playing World of Warcraft every night for working on your idea in the margins of your day.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it comes down to the physics of mass. Right now, you, the listener, are the smallest, leanest, and fastest you will ever be. You have zero mass.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means as a business grows, it accumulates mass. It acquires long-term lease contracts, excess staff, rigid IT departments, inventory, endless meetings.
It's like putting a massive freighter ship in motion. Once it has that mass, turning it around takes miles and miles of ocean.
Exactly. When you are small and have no mass, you can change direction in a single afternoon. You can pivot your entire product line without having to fire anyone, breach a contract, or lose millions of dollars.
Wow.
Embracing that lean state, starting in those few free hours a week, is a massive strategic advantage. You can outmaneuver the lumbering giants.
So You've started lean. You're scratching your own itch in the margins of your day. How do you actually execute and build the product without getting bogged down in scope creep?
Right, the endless feature list.
Exactly. The secret mechanism here is embracing constraints, letting less be a good thing.
Constraints force creativity. When you don't have unlimited time or money, you have to figure out the most elegant solution. Like, look at The Price is Right. They've run for 30 years on one simple formula.
It's true.
Or take Southwest Airlines as an operational example. They constrained their entire fleet to fly only Boeing 737s.
Wait, really? Just one type of plane?
Just the 737. That wasn't just a quirky choice. It was an operational force multiplier. It meant every pilot, flight attendant, and mechanic could work on any plane in the fleet. All the spare parts match. The constraint made the entire business infinitely easier to run.
So the philosophy is to build half a product, not a half-assed product.
Yes.
You cut your ambition in half so you can make the remaining half absolutely incredible. You have to find the epicenter. If you open a hot dog stand, you can lose the onions, you can lose the relish, you can even lose the fancy cart and just sell out of a cooler. But you cannot lose the hot dog.
Right.
Figure out what your core hot dog is and focus all your energy right there.
And part of finding that epicenter means deliberately ignoring the details early on in the process.
The thick Sharpie concept. When the authors design software, they sketch the initial interfaces with big, thick markers. It physically prevents them from drawing the tiny, high-resolution details like drop shadows and font sizes that simply don't matter yet.
You literally can't draw them.
Right. Walt Disney animators were taught the exact same thing. Forget the detail in the early stages. Just get the broad strokes right.
It is about acting as a curator. A museum doesn't put every piece of art it owns on display. That would be a cluttered warehouse. The true art of the museum is in what the curator actively chooses to leave out. The sources mention Zingerman's Deli, where they might choose an olive oil purely on its authentic taste, ignoring the fancy packaging. Or think of Gordon Ramsay rescuing failing restaurants.
Oh, classic.
Right. The menus always have 80 disjointed dishes. His first move is always to slash the menu down to 10 items and make those 10 items flawless. Throw less at the problem.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Here's the trap I see teams fall into. They think they've agreed on what those core 10 items are or what the core hot dog is. They write a 50-page specification document, everyone reads it, and everyone nods.
Oh, the nods.
Yeah, but in reality, they're suffering from the illusion of agreement. Abstract documents trick us. In our heads, we are all picturing completely different things while reading the exact same words.
Because abstract documents are dead documents.
Yeah.
If you want true understanding and actual progress, you have to get real immediately. Stop describing what something looks like in a word processor and start drawing it or building it.
The example of Alaska Airlines is a masterclass in this. They wanted to build the airport of the future. They didn't just look at blueprints and theoretical flowcharts.
What did they do?
They rented a warehouse and literally built a full-scale mock-up out of cardboard boxes.
Ha, that's amazing.
Right. They built cardboard kiosks, cardboard podiums, and they physically walked passengers and staff through it. That tangible reality is how you discover what actually works.
Because making tangible decisions is the only way to make progress. Deferring choices destroys a team's momentum. Saying, let's think about it, is the enemy of the starter. Swap it for, let's decide on it.
I love that.
The key here is to make tiny decisions. Tiny decisions mean you can't make a huge, fatal mistake. If a tiny decision is wrong, you simply course correct the next day.
Okay, so we are building our core product, we are sketching with a thick Sharpie and making tiny decisions. But the day-to-day grind threatens to derail everything. Let's talk about how to protect your actual productivity because the mechanisms here are fascinating.
You have to realize that interruption is the ultimate enemy of meaningful work. The sources use a brilliant analogy, comparing getting into the alone zone of deep work to the biological process of getting into REM sleep.
This completely shifted how I view my workday. You don't just close your eyes and fall directly into REM sleep. You fall asleep, you enter stage 1, then stage 2, and you slowly work your way down into the deeper restorative cycles.
Right.
If someone nudges you awake right before you hit REM, you don't just close your eyes and go right back to the deep sleep. You have to start the entire biological cycle over from the very beginning.
Cognitive work is exactly the same. If
Yeah.
you get 45 minutes of deep, focused coding or writing done, and then you have to take a 15-minute phone call.
It's over.
Yeah. You don't just hang up and instantly resume deep focus. You are constantly being mentally jolted awake.
Hmm.
You spend the whole day in the shallow end of cognitive effort and never reach that deep productive state.
And meetings are the absolute worst culprits for this. They are the ultimate scheduled interruption. The math they use to explain the cost of meetings is brutal.
It really puts things in perspective.
If you schedule a 1-hour meeting and invite 10 people, that is not a 1-hour meeting. That is a 10-hour productivity loss for your organization. You just traded 10 hours of potential deep work for an hour of people sitting around a table, drifting off subject, and waiting for their turn to speak.
Which is why protecting your time and your physical health is paramount. Sleep is non-negotiable.
Yes.
The sources point out that sleep deprivation doesn't just make you tired, it fundamentally alters your cognitive abilities. It destroys your creativity and makes you stubborn.
That is so true.
When your brain is exhausted, it can't process complex, elegant solutions. Instead, it forces you to focus on brute force, low-level tasks just to feel busy.
So guard your sleep, cancel the toxic meetings, and focus your energy on what won't change. I think it's so easy to get distracted by the next big trend or the shiny new technology that everyone on social media is talking about.
Chasing the fad.
Exactly. But look at the giants. Amazon focuses on fast shipping and low prices. Japanese automakers focus on extreme reliability. Those are core human desires. Nobody's going to wake up in 10 years and say, I wish this ship's slower and cost more.
Yes, find the permanent features of your industry and build your foundation there. And as you are building those permanent features, pay attention to the waste you're producing. Everything you do creates a byproduct, and you should be looking for ways to sell it.
Henry Ford is the classic example. The process of manufacturing the Model T created an absolute mountain of wood scraps. Instead of paying to throw it away, he turned those scraps into charcoal briquettes.
That's brilliant.
That byproduct became Kingsford charcoal. Or look at the band Wilco. They filmed the messy, chaotic, often painful process of recording an album. They released that footage as a documentary, and it was wildly successful. You are always generating something of value while you make your main product.
And whatever you are making, you need to ensure that it is decommoditized. If you are successful, people will copy you. It is an unavoidable fact of commerce. The only way to protect yourself from being cloned is to inject you into your product or service.
Because you can't be copied if you are the product. Like, Zappos sells the exact same sneakers as 100 other online retailers, but they injected an absolute fanatical obsession with customer service into their corporate DNA. That unique culture became their uncopyable product.
Right.
Or Polyface Farms. They don't just sell meat, they sell total environmental transparency. Customers are invited to walk anywhere on the farm at any time. You can't copy that level of openness unless you genuinely live it.
It's about finding your unique tone.
But wait, if I want to have that unique tone and compete with the big players, don't I need the best gear? If I'm starting a podcast, don't I need a $3,000 microphone? The sources completely shut this down with the concept from the music world.
Yeah.
Tone is in your fingers.
It's a classic truth among guitarists. You can go out and buy the exact same guitar, the exact same amplifier, and the exact same effects pedals as Eddie Van Halen.
But you won't sound like him.
No, when you plug it in and play, you will just sound like you. Conversely, if Eddie picked up a cheap, beat-up pawn shop guitar, he would still sound exactly like Eddie Van Halen. The magic is in the execution, not the equipment.
Give Tiger Woods a set of cheap plastic golf clubs from a discount store, and he is still going to absolutely destroy you on the golf course. People use the lack of high-end equipment as a crutch because they're looking for a shortcut or an excuse not to start.
This raises an important question for you, the listener. What are you overcomplicating right now? The text heavily emphasizes that good enough is fine.
Yeah.
Look at the mechanics of political campaign ads. When a scandal breaks, an ad attacking the opponent is on television the very next day.
Yeah.
The production quality is usually terrible.
Just off.
A static text, a cheap voiceover recorded in a closet, still photos zooming in. But it gets the job done.
Yeah.
Timeliness and momentum are often far more important than a polished cinematic presentation.
We wait around for perfection, and perfection never actually arrives. We just have to launch now. I love the story about camper shoes. They wanted to open a new store in San Francisco, but the construction wasn't completely finished. Most companies would delay the grand opening by 3 months.
Sorry, they wait?
Did they wait? No. They opened an empty room, laid a piece of cheap plywood over some empty shoe boxes, displayed the shoes on top, and gave customers markers to draw on the unfinished drywall.
That's incredible.
They called it a walk in progress. The customers loved the authenticity, and it was a massive hit.
They realize that just because there's a list of things less to do on a clipboard somewhere doesn't mean the product isn't ready to be experienced.
Okay, we have covered so much ground today. Let's bring it all together. The ultimate takeaways from this deep dive into the philosophy of rework are clear. Ignore the pessimism of the real world. Scratch your own itch so you know exactly what to build.
Shrink your plans.
Yes, shrink your massive, paralyzing plans into tiny, manageable daily decisions. Put down the fine point pen and grab a thick Sharpie to focus on the broad strokes. Protect your cognitive REM sleep by canceling toxic meetings. Get a full night's sleep and get your work out there immediately, even if the walls aren't painted yet.
And I'll leave you with one final lingering concept for the very conclusion of these notes. It is a powerful warning. Inspiration is perishable.
Ooh, I like that.
If you have an idea, you have a strict expiration date on your motivation to execute it. Inspiration is like a beautiful piece of fresh fruit. If you put it in your mental refrigerator and tell yourself you will get to it when the time is right or when you finally have the perfect plan, it isn't going to be there waiting for you. It is just going to slowly rot.
So, what does this all mean? It means this deep dive is only valuable if you apply it. Take that heavy 80-pound backpack of traditional corporate rules, slip it off your shoulders, and leave it at the bottom of the mountain. You are lean, you are fast, and your tone is in your fingers. You don't need permission from the real world, and you certainly don't need a map. You just need to take the first step. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time.